Hey everyone, Merry Christmas! In this video, I'm going to show you what's next regarding this frustrating battle to see some form of relief check from our government. I'm going to break down the odds and the chances of us going through different paths and the options we have going forward for either $2,000 stimulus checks or $600 stimulus checks, and all of the alternatives and politics that are going into this. We're going to break this down in a simple way using the flow chart, so that way we've got a really crystal clear understanding of kind of where things stand right now, because it's pretty dang blurry. In the meantime, Merry Christmas. The coupon code for the amazing courses down below does expire tonight, and you can always email me for a bundle at kevin@meetkevin.com. Okay, so before we hit the options going forward, let's go ahead and hit the flow chart and give a quick little reminder of where we stand. So here's the scoop. On December 21st, the Senate passed the stimulus package at 11:41 p.m. The next day, on the 22nd, the world was actually somewhat finally breathing a sigh of relief. Because after 8 months, we had a deal. We had an agreement. Yeah, we were getting tiny checks, $600 of tiny checks. $600 for adults, no garnishments. $600 for children, no garnishments. $25 billion in rental relief. Hey, you know what? Is that as much as we need? Probably not. Moody's thinks we might need as much as $70 billion in rental relief, so it's really another tiny check to solve a larger gaping wound. It's a tiny bill. It's a crappy bill. But we finally were able to breathe a sigh of relief that something was coming. $300 a week in unemployment was coming. We were getting 11 more weeks of unemployment pay, which otherwise expires. We were getting $100 in worker boost, $1,000 EIDL grants, up to $10,000. And this time they actually set up a path for lower income communities to actually get the full $10,000, fixing kind of some of the crap that they had last time. The second drop PPP round, the vaccine money, the school money, the tax credits for employers, the paid leave, the transportation money, the eviction protections, and more. This was a sigh of relief, and again, still a slap in the face because it was small, but it meant something was finally being done. The Congress that can't get anything done finally got something done. Still crappy and still stinks, but they got something done. Well, on December 22nd, the world also got Donald Trump issuing a statement for demand that $2,000 stimulus checks and $4,000 per couple be amended into this bill. Donald Trump decried $43 billion in aid going to foreign nations. This $43 billion, by the way, just for comparison, represents 4% of the $900 billion stimulus package, and it's actually part of a separate bill. So you've got two bills. You've got one bill that funds the government with the $43 billion in foreign aid, and then you've got the second, the stimulus bill, that's $900 billion. And I just want to put that into perspective because that $43 billion of foreign aid is just 4% of the stimulus package. When I saw that, I was actually surprised. I thought the foreign aid was a lot more expensive relative to the stimulus aid. Now, it's still frustrating seeing that, but it is true that the White House had requested this foreign aid money. In fact, this is from the Congressional Research Service. This is sort of a nonpartisan, it's a nonpartisan research group for Congress. And this is from May 27th. And when we zoom in, we could see right here from May, this was already being discussed. For the fiscal year 2021, the president is requesting a total of $1.4 billion in bilateral assistance for Egypt, for example. And I was going through looking at like Pakistan, things like that. It seems weird, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around where all this money is going because it is kind of weird. It's like, hey, Americans are suffering right now. Why is, all this money going elsewhere? Like, even if it's just 4%, let's use that for Americans. It's sort of the first impression. But I'll probably make another video on that in the future, breaking that down a little bit more. For now, let's focus on this. In addition to this, Donald Trump then mounts what I call his populist agenda. And this is simple to understand in that when you think of populism, I like to just think of what's going to be very popular for the people, right? What's the best for them? It's kind of like a student council body president going, we're going to have ice cream every day. Yeah. Now, the reality of that sometimes can be difficult, but it still mounts that agenda. And so the agenda that Trump mounted here is more money for Americans, less money for foreigners. And the same night as he takes on this agenda, no more money going abroad, send the money to Americans. Very popular, very smart in marketing, right? From a marketing POV, brilliant, right? Okay, then the same night he publishes a full account on election fraud. He seeks campaign contributions to his campaign, and he calls the bill a disgrace. This is going to become very important for the next steps going forward. Then, the next day, Donald Trump repeals the NDAA. This is the military funding bill. And he demands, in part, that the Warren Amendment be removed. That's the renaming of Confederate bases. And demands that Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act be repealed. And that limits censorship of Trump media posts by basically removing liability limits for YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. That's one of the effects. There are many, many effects to Section 230. Donald Trump says that if Section 230 is not repealed, then Russia or Russian and Chinese disinformation can more easily spread online. That is Donald Trump's argument as to why that would be a win for China. Then, that is not having that repeal would be a win for China. And that's why Donald Trump says, I'm vetoing this because we can't give a win to China and Russia. Democrats obviously disagree. December 24th, Congress is in turmoil. Congress feels blindsided. They feel that Mnuchin told them that Donald Trump would sign this bill. The foreign aid money was requested by the Trump administration, whether it was by Trump himself or cabinet members within the White House. It was requested by the White House. But the argument is still very useful for Trump's motives, which is gaining as much support from the people as possible. In fact, his effort has been so successful that there are probably, I would venture to guess, and we should run a poll, I would venture to guess 30 to 40% of us, potentially even more than half of us, feel that Donald Trump should not sign the $600 stimulus check bill. And Donald Trump has very effectively disgraced the bill, essentially, or at least labeled it as a disgrace, which it may be. I think it's tiny, right? It is definitely way too small. But anyway, Republicans are trying to support Trump. And this is why we got Kevin McCarthy in the House saying, hey, well, let's investigate this foreign spending. That's a way of saying, Trump, we're with you. This is wrong. Why is money going abroad? More money needs to go to Americans, not abroad. Kevin McCarthy mounts this offense in the House, and his offense fails in the House. Democrats try to take credit for the $2,000 stimulus check idea, going, hey, that was our idea. We're on board. We'll do it. Let's go. We got the amendment ready to go. Their unanimous consent motion fails. That was on Christmas Eve. Now, December 26th, we have a lapse in unemployment benefits coming up. December 28th, Congress will attempt to act. And we're going to go through in just a moment. We're going to jump over the options in terms of what's likely to happen here. But on December 28th, Congress will attempt to act. The House will try to override the NDAA, a veto. They will try to pass a continuing resolution to keep the government funded. And they will try to pass the $2,000 stimulus checks. That'll be a 3 p.m. vote. Now, these two votes are really interesting. If Republicans vote with Democrats to override the NDAA, then what happens is Republicans give the middle finger to Trump and you divide the Republican Party. This is a hot potato. A continuing resolution is very likely to get pushed through. Congress does not want to see a government shutdown, though whether or not Trump will actually sign that continuing resolution remains to be seen. The $2,000 stimulus check provision. This is expected to be popular amongst many Republicans and Democrats, though there is going to be a large group of Republicans that say, no way, Jose. And this does risk potentially fracturing the Republican Party and dividing the Republican Party into two parts. The Senate, as of yet, has no agenda, but the House will plan to vote on these items on 3 p.m. on Monday. So is Congress likely to pass the CR and extend it? Yes. Will Trump sign it? My guess is probably. In my opinion, there's little reason for him to keep a shutdown going while we have the urgency of COVID already. Like, we have enough urgency. In 2018, he did shut down the government to get his border wall funding, but he needed to create urgency. We already have that with the COVID crisis. Although, hey, that could potentially double the urgency if he doesn't sign the continuing resolution. So we'll see. Either way, December 29th at midnight, so, daybreak between 28th and the 29th, the government will shut down. Now, student loan forbearance was scheduled to end on the 31st of December, but this has actually already been moved back to January, so that's one cliff that is gone. January 3rd, the congressional session ends at 11:59 p.m. That means the 116th Congress is done, and we go on to the next Congress, the 117th Congress. The issue with that is the $600 stimulus check bill dies. And that's 1 day before Trump is required to sign the bill. Now, Congress says there was a delay in actually shipping him the bill because it's so long and they had printer issues and they had technical glitches, and that's why they didn't get it to him sooner. Either way, what we're up against now is if Trump does nothing, the bill dies. And we'll go through the options and odds in just a moment. January 4th, evictions begin, and Congress could, on January 4th, re-vote on the same bill. But this bill is becoming such a hot potato, it seems unlikely that Congress is actually going to re-vote on this same bill if it dies. We'll see, but let's go forward with the chances now. So, option number 1, Trump signs without any changes. I think this is less than 20% likely. The reason I think this is less than 20% likely is because this bill is becoming very unpopular due to the $43 billion in foreign aid spending and even $89 million going to maintenance and furniture. Now, just a heads, and that's over in Capitol Hill. Just a heads up, the mainstream media is branding that as $89 million for straight up furniture, which when I heard that, I'm like, what? Like, they're never in the office. But when you actually read the bill a little bit more, it does say it goes to things like air conditioning, maintenance, building maintenance, and upkeep. And this is an annual item. So every year they appropriate money for Capitol Hill to not fall apart, basically. Now, I still think it's terrible that it actually literally says furniture, don't get me wrong. But when you hear that in the media, there's more detail to the 89 mil. It is still a little like a bit of a head scratcher anyway, because it's a lot of money. Anyway, the Populist Movement, if Donald Trump signs this bill without any changes, and this is why I think this is only 20% likely, if Donald Trump signs this bill without any changes, then in my opinion, his populist movement ends in failure. And this is why I do not think Trump is going to sign this bill. Because if Trump signs this bill, he's signing into law a disgrace. He called it a disgrace. And that's why I don't think he's likely to sign this bill. He would then also take responsibility for delaying the $600 tiny checks, the unemployment, the PPP money, the eviction protections, school aid, vaccine money, etc. And literally, he got nothing in return if he just signs. This would be the worst thing that Trump could do for himself. And so therefore, this seems very unlikely. Now, Congress is begging him to sign, but again, it's unlikely. If it happens, hey, okay, fine. We'll get the $600 tiny checks. Hopefully maybe we'll get a new stimulus package in the future, but that's up in the air. That's like wishful thinking at this point with Congress. But we will get eviction protections, PPP money, vaccine money, rental relief. We'll get the $25 billion in rental relief, the $100 worker boost, the $300 a week for the unemployment boost, the extended unemployment for 11 weeks, the paid leave, school aid, transportation aid. We will get a lot of things. You know, the tiny checks, again, they're a slap in the face, but there's so much more in that bill. Instead, option 2, and I think this is probably the largest chance. I think this is about 48% likely. So the option 2 is Trump signs this bill with changes, some form of a modification. Now, what kind of modification, that remains to be seen. That's very difficult to predict. But let's make a couple guesses here. So there could be $2,000 stimulus checks. Democrats and Trump are on board after all, but this is probably going to require splitting the Republican Party because they don't want to spend more than $1 trillion. If they do $2,000 stimulus checks, they're going to be about at a $1.4 trillion package, maybe a $1.3 to $1.4 trillion package. It's very unlikely that Republicans are going to go for that large of a check because they have a red line at $1 trillion. That's going to become very important in just a moment. Now, Graham and Trump, Lindsey Graham and Trump, are discussing very likely this veto, both the NDAA, the money for the government, and the stimulus package today at Trump's golf course. Graham is on board with $2,000 stimulus checks, but he wants Democrats to repeal Section 230. So it's kind of, we'll give you the $2,000, but we want an amendment. And that's where the other option comes up. We could get $2,000 stimulus checks with amendments, and those amendments would probably fall on Section 230 or on the unemployment section or maybe the rental relief section. Basically, Republicans might be convinced to do 2,000 if they're able to take something else away. Not sure, but that is a possibility. Alternatively, and this is something that I came up with, so it's a guess here, but budgetarily it could make sense. $1,000 to $2,000 or $1,200 stimulus checks. So this would be a compromise. It wouldn't be $2,000 checks and it wouldn't be $600 checks. But the reason I wrote $1,000 as a possibility is because that will make the package worth, instead of $900 billion, about $1 trillion. And that's seen as a red line for Republicans. So Trump might actually go for $1,000 checks because it would be a negotiating strategy to say, hey, I went in high, I tried to get you $2, at least I got you better than the $600. It gives Trump an option to sign this bill without looking like his plan failed. So this is why we need probably some kind of modification to get this bill through. Will it be the full 2,000? That's going to be tough because Republicans are going to vomit over the $1.3 to $1.4 trillion price tag. It's a big number. Now, that's not to say it can't still happen. You could divide the Republican Party, and this is why you're probably going to get, if we get $2,000 checks, we'd probably get amendments to something else. If we go for straight up $2,000 checks, it's possible. You've definitely got Republicans who are willing to do this. Romney, McConnell, some of these other Republicans would probably go for it. However, and I know we don't think that McConnell will do anything. We haven't heard from him yet. But McConnell's a little bit more kind of like, he tries to keep the party together. And if the party's on board with doing it, he'll go for it. Problem is, you're going to have people like Rand Paul and Ted Cruz who are going to go, no way, Jose. But, you know, these are people that aren't going to be okay with anything anyway. So how much the Republican Party divides will kind of guide us on how these checks go out. So this gives us a little bit more to think about here. So what is the result of this? Well, the result of this option number 2 here, is we get an amended stimulus package. It's something that Trump can sign, and then we end up getting $1,000 to $2,000 survival checks, because there's still a slap in the face relative to what the world is giving in stimulus. But we do get all of the other benefits as well. The eviction protections, the PPP, vax money, the rental relief, the worker boost, the paid leave, school aid, transportation aid, right? That's good. Now, option number 3, Trump vetoes early. I put this at a 2% chance. There's like no reason for Trump to veto early, because if he vetoes early, all he does is give up control. It gives Congress the power to override his veto. That's very unlikely to happen because he doesn't want to give up any control, and that makes sense. We know Donald Trump doesn't want to give up any control. So there's no reason for him to veto this. Instead, if he wasn't going to sign it, he'd be better off just doing nothing, and then the bill would basically expire dead in the form of a pocket veto. The result of this, and again, a veto happening, I think low chance, but if it happens, if Trump vetoes it and Congress overturns it, then we would get the $600 tiny checks, the eviction protections, PPP, and so on and so forth. Or if it's vetoed and Congress fails to override it, we get nothing. So literally all those other benefits go away. Now, the last option, and this to me has a 30% chance, so it's a very real chance of happening. Trump just straight up doesn't sign. Like, we don't get the amendments. Congress digs in and says, look, we're not doing anything unless you sign it the way it is. That would mean Trump, because remember, we go back to option 1 over here. If Trump has to sign without any changes, that's going to look like a failure. That's not going to look good. And in that case, Trump is very likely to say, fine, Congress, you don't want to make any amendments? Fine, I won't do anything. Bill fails via pocket veto. January 4th, Congress can reintroduce the same bill and vote on it again, which they would have to do because it would be the new session of Congress. This seems unlikely, though, because politically, this bill is becoming toxic. It is getting so bagged on in the media, and there are parts of it that deserve to be bagged on. But when something becomes so politically unpopular, it's so unlikely that we're going to see Congress vote for this again. This is why I also think it's very unlikely that Republicans are going to support a veto override on either the NDAA or this package. Alternatively, Congress waits until January 20th. This means we get an entirely new bill, potentially negotiated after January 20th. Maybe the $600 check bill is used as a foundation, and maybe now the checks go up to $1,200, if Democrats are able to win for a push for this, or win in a push for this. But the reality is, this would likely mean we're going to get 0 checks and 0 support for the next 2 months. So we will have to go through the next, 1 to 2 months without eviction protections, rental relief, stimulus checks, unemployment pay, unemployment extensions. Maybe we'd get an executive order on some eviction protections, maybe, but we're not going to get the PPP money, the vaccine money, the rental relief, the unemployment extension, the unemployment boost, the transportation aid, the school aid. All of that dies. So, bottom line, what do we have here? Well, in my opinion, we have a less than 20% chance of Trump just signing this bill as is, giving us $600 checks. So 20% chance on $600 checks in this example. So you know what? We'll write down a little tracker over here. $600, one of the options is 20%. Okay? Then we've got option number 2 here. This is $1,000 to $2,000 checks. This, I think, has somewhere around a 48% chance. It's getting some kind of modification. So $1,000 to $2,000, somewhere around a 48% chance. Then we've got a 2% chance of really getting nothing. That is, we get a veto, but Congress fails to override it. That's entirely possible. So we got this $0 possibility at this 2% chance here. And now we're going to add in this other possibility, and this is the 30% chance and that is that Trump just straight up doesn't sign. That's going to get added on to this section here. So, bottom line, we, in my opinion, and this is totally my guess, but based on all of the logic I laid out here, I think this is an educated guess. We have a 20% chance of getting the $600. We have a 48% chance of getting the $1,000 to $2,000, or some kind of amended version. Because I just really don't see Trump, like, for me to be wrong on this percentage and for this 20% to happen, Trump's gonna have to, for some reason, get convinced to just sign this bill, which is what Congress wants, but it's not gonna look good for Trump. That's why I put this at a 20% chance. $1,000 to $2,000, 48% chance. I think we'll see some kind of modification. But then there's also the very real possibility, the 38% chance over here, that we just end up with nothing, or 32%. So there you have the complete update. Check out the courses down below. If any of this stresses you out, get your life insurance, get your 4 free stocks via the links down below. And folks, we'll see you in the next video.